Ryan Snow, how are you, brother?
I'm great, Walter. How are you, man?
Very good, very good. So you are the author of the book, uh, hold on, Miracle Morning for Salespeople. How did you get involved? How did you get involved in Miracle Morning?
That is correct. Yeah. So I got involved actually with Hal through Cutco, which was not part of my life plan. And so Cutco is actually like selling doors in homes. Now they do it online. They've shifted as people have had to pivot their business, but it started out. I graduated from college and I was looking for a job. I graduated right after 9/11. Basically, the whole market just kind of crapped out on me right before I was graduating. And so I had planned on going into consulting in Boston, like most of my friends had, coming out with an econ degree. And that was my path forward. And then when this started, when 9/11 happened and the economy fell apart, I had to find another way to make a different move and shift.
Yep.
And so my dad, I think, grabbed like a business card in a diner, and it was some crazy like $14 base appointment. And he's like, go check it out. So I did. I went through the interview process. They like show you how cool the knives are and whatever. And they're great knives. I've got like the set still sitting here 20 years later. But that wasn't really what sold me. What sold me was the person, the manager, Mara. Fausto is now Mara Berghoff. She's married to John Berghoff, who is like a rock star mentor of mine as well. And she basically sold me on wanting to work with her and learn from her and learn sales. And I went home and my dad was like, so what was it? I told him it's like selling knives in houses, whatever. He's like, so you're not doing it, right? Like immediately it was like, you're not going to do
Like,
that, are you? And I was like, no, I'm gonna do it. And so I got into sales. I did really well with them. My first summer with them, I became an assistant manager and a sales manager for them in that office. And then the
yeah.
following year, I opened my own branch, and we did a little over $250,000 in kitchen knife sales in one summer when I opened up my office up there. And that record is still there for New England. So that's the number one branch office, 20 years still running
Wow.
for a
So you
branch
put
number.
that record up in 1 year.
That was just the summer. Yeah. So the branch offices that they own, a lot of times it's college kids open them just for the summer. What a cool experience that is to
Yep.
be running your own business. I mean, I was like 21, 22 years old when I did that. And to be up on stage, getting awards and like training sales. I hired over 100 salespeople. I was 22. I
No
had like
way.
40 and 50-year-olds working for me. It was crazy.
Right.
But you learn all the elements of the business, having to manage like ad spends and things like that, getting people in the door, running the interviews, learn to speak in front of people. Um, and then the budgeting side, like running the office and the expenses that go along with that, managing the money, which I epically failed at as a 22-year-old. I was like, oh, we're killing it. I can buy a new car. I did all the like stupid things that you shouldn't have done.
Yep.
But I don't do that anymore because I learned it when I was 22 instead of when I was 32. So um, we got connected through there. I was one of the top branch managers going through the company. He was the top sales rep in the company. And I've stayed connected with a lot of people through Cutco, some really good relationships out of there, and that have been friends and business mentors and whatever. And that's how we connected. So I was on his book launch when he launched the original Miracle Morning. I wasn't there for the money. Like it had sold like 5 copies at the time when I was there.
It wasn't
Now
for the
it's,
money, clearly.
yeah, now it's millions of copies, right? It's one of the
Right.
biggest sellers on Amazon. And he's done huge things with it. And what a great thing for that to take off for him because he's just a great coach and mentor for people. But I had suggested to him at the time, like, hey, have you thought about doing a series at all? Like, I'm using this with my sales team, and it's been really helpful. And he was like, I mean, the ideas crossed my mind, but I'm not really doing anything with it.
Right.
And I said, it'd be good if we had one that was geared towards salespeople. And he was like, well, let's just write it. You and I are both salespeople, so we'll figure it out. That's
No
how it
kidding.
came to
It
be.
just came from a conversation as simple as, hey, you know what? You're doing a great job. I'm supporting you. This would be a great idea for you to do. And he pulled you into that saying, yeah, you're right. Will you do it with me?
Yeah. And we just went partners on it. And what an experience that was. I mean, it's tough getting 2 different people's ideas into one book. But we did it. We had the coaching help of Honore Corder, who puts out his whole book series now. And she came on board while we were in the process of trying to put that together. And so helpful having the right coach and mentor. I mean, she sold over 4 million books on Amazon. So
Wow. Yeah, that's like you got the right people from Cutco, which is like you wouldn't think or expect. Your father even made it almost a joke to go and work there. and you just followed your kind of path and mission, and it's turned into, just because of who you are, the people you're surrounding yourself with, great opportunities. That's awesome.
Yeah,
Right.
there's been lots of dips and turns in between there. Like I shifted out of it. I got out of sales for a long time. I was a classroom teacher in a behavioral alternative school, and
Yep.
loved it. And that's probably how I ended up now teaching sales and stuff like that. But yeah, that's where I cut my teeth in sales initially, and sales management.
So that ties right into how we met. So you're the sales trainer over at Cameron Real Estate Group, and you gave me in part a lot of advice when I was there with you guys. And I've seen you do nothing but explode since then, just really helping the brand, helping everybody in the office do an amazing job. And the model that Cameron has anyway is a phenomenal model, right? But now the way you're teaching and coaching and adding to it, it really adds value to the company in general. What brought you out of teaching and into sales again? And I guess the other question would be, what brought you into real estate sales specifically?
Great question. Yeah. So what brought me back to sales was expenses at home.
Hey, me too. Every time I go back to selling, right?
What's funny is, so I was teaching, I taught for about 7 years. And in that time I started having kids, and I realized when I was single and on my own and whatever, and didn't have to have a ton of money, I could meet all my expenses. Teaching was fine, but I would say teachers are probably some of the most underpaid, unsung heroes that are out there. I mean, they're basically developing our youth and the people who are going to run this country someday. And it's hard to live off of that salary, like extremely difficult if you have children. So for me, my wife at the time wanted to be able to be home with the kids. She was a nurse and whatever, so we wanted to make it so she could work as little as possible, and we were able to do that, but we would have never been able to do that on my teacher salary. Right. And my teacher's aide in the classroom had just gotten her license the year before me, and she made more money in her first year of real estate than she did working as, like, double what she made probably working as my teacher's aide. Yeah. And she was like, you got to do it. And so I went and got my license. I started with KW. I immediately was someone who used leverage because I kept my full-time job. As a teacher, I had flexibility in the afternoons and evenings. I was available on weekends. I had summers off. Like, it just kind of fit the bill for me to be able to do both for a little while. And so I had a transaction coordinator, like, right out the gate, pretty much after like 2 deals of doing paperwork. I'm like, I'm not doing this anymore.
Yeah, done.
My strength,
this doesn't make sense anymore.
Time. Yeah, I'm missing phone calls with people to make sure that the contract's signed right, and I'm going to screw it up anyway. So I found leverage and built a team pretty quickly. And small team, couple agents, admin help, and we did pretty well. And pretty quickly got grabbed to move up into leadership and became a team leader with KW for a few years and ran an office for them in Westford, Mass.
Wow. And what did you think about running that? Like, how did that affect you and your business and you as a person, like your family life and everything?
So financially being able to do both was huge. So building the team was awesome because even though it didn't generate it's not hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars that I was making, but I was netting $50,000, $60,000, $70,000 a year without actually going on appointments, without actually doing much in the way of lead gen. I kept in touch with my sphere and passed leads off to the team. But even after expenses, and that's $4,000 a month, $5,000 a month that I was pulling in before anything else. So financially, like, building the team was a big part of it, but then running the office got me to use the same sort of entrepreneurial background. I mean, the way that a lot of those TL roles are set up is you get paid a base salary, which is okay. But then where you make all your money is in recruiting and in profit bonuses. Right. And we knocked it out of the park in a few years. We went from like 90 agents, I would say, to over 150, and from like 90,000 in profit to like over 320,000 in profit in just a few years. So I made my money on the bonuses. It created a lot of opportunity for my family in that sense, financially. And then also when I went in, I was able to negotiate what I wanted. I mean, they wanted somebody who could come in and lead and teach and whatever, and who had the sales background, which I had. I had already run my own Cutco office. And so I'd done a lot of the same things. They were basically like mirror images. I mean, that was my training ground, right? I had already recruited over 100 people, and a big part of the job is recruiting. So that was a big part of it. And I was able to negotiate to be able to get 3 weeks vacation my first year, and then it built up to 4 and 5. And so I had a lot of freedom and flexibility for being in that level of leadership role. And that's the opportunities that it opened for me. And it opened doors in relationships. So I met the group of people that I met at Cutco, but then being a leader in a company like KW with over 100,000 agents across the country, across the world. And the leaders, they have great leadership. And so I became very tight with a lot of the team leaders in the New England area. And then outside of New England, as we were attending events and trainings for them, I got a ton of good training there. And I left. I left the brokerage.
So why did you end up leaving? Because obviously everything was going well. Everything was going well, and you were doing good. What ended up being the point where you said, you know what, it's time for something new?
So probably lots of things. Actually, I didn't have ownership in the company, which was number one. Number two was I felt like I had maxed out a little bit. Like we had 30% market share in the town that we were in. We had number one market share in like 7 out of the 9 towns that we could be in. Like there was only so much growth and damage that I could see myself doing in that role moving forward, unless we were to expand and have multiple offices going on. And that would have required me being in less of a hands-on day-to-day role and more of like an ownership. And it just wasn't available there. So, and I had new opportunities. So one of the things that had come up while I was there, we had already launched the Miracle Morning book. I built out a workbook for it a year later and started running these one-day workshops for the workbook. And that was amazing. And so I ran them at my office and a handful of offices around. And there was just a lot of pull for me to go and do those. And in order for me to do that outside of New England, it involved travel and being out for like 2 or 3 days at a time. And it was just time to do that. And I was launching a new book too. I had explosive sales growth in real estate coming out. So I was writing that. And I needed that time back at that point. There's time and money, right? Money, I had figured out how I can make more money. Like that was no longer the issue. For a while, that's what you're trying to figure out. And then once I figured that piece out, it was like, okay, well now I need my time back to be able to build out some other things with leverage and systems. And so I left. I wanted to leave because I was excited about it, but I loved the people and the team that we had built there. And I still touch base with those people, and it was cool to help them grow their businesses. I think one of the reasons we were so successful is because I was able to help teach them the team model, and there were a lot more teams when I left. And so they were able to build in some of that structure and process and grow a business instead of just a very busy job that a lot of people end up walking out of. So I couldn't let go of the opportunity to go train and speak. I'm a teacher. That's what I like doing. That's what I liked doing best, even in the TL role. I didn't love recruiting. I loved coaching and training. So every recruiting appointment was just a coaching appointment. And eventually those people moved over because they wanted to coach with me and they wanted to train with me. So that was really the opportunity. I couldn't say no to that. And so I traveled around North America for 1.5 years and did workshops all over the place. I've taught the workshop to over 1,000, maybe 2,000 or 3,000 people at this point.
It's crazy.
And so, that was the big shift. I was traveling a couple weeks a month, 2 or 3 days a week, and then working on books and content and stuff at home, and had a couple coaching clients. And
how long did you do that, Ryan? So before you came over to Cameron, how long were you in that position, in that role, and what made you stop that? I know we have had this conversation before off camera. But I really think your story is really inspirational for people who are looking to become coaches, people who are looking to become trainers or published authors. So what made you go from this pretty hectic? Because you're saying you're traveling every week almost, right? A couple
weeks a month, every other week, What made me change it is life changes. So I went through a divorce. So I mean that's difficult enough in itself. I have 3 kids that are 6. One will be 9 coming up this month in a few days, and then the other one just turned 11. So I had little kids, and in the divorce, I ended up with 50-50 custody, which was the goal. And it just made it really difficult to be able to travel on that level. I felt like I needed to be here for them in order to do that. And so it made more sense for me to go into a position where I could be local. And I basically pivoted to a very similar position that I was in. I was just back to training in one brokerage and coaching in one brokerage. And I would do a handful of workshops on the side locally back in New England again. And that's what I've been doing. But now there's like another whole piece of this that comes into play. So
Zoom calls, man.
Zoom.
I love it. So what can we expect for the future, Ryan? Like, where are you going now? Now that the world has opened up. Right. Because you were always an educator. You were always, traveling, trying to get your message out to the world. Not trying, you were getting your message out. And now that it's opened up and you have a bigger stage, what are you seeing yourself doing going forward?
So I'll tell you, it's not even just the bigger stage. I think for me, it's always been like, how much impact can I make? Like, how many people can I help? And how can I get them to implement? Like one of the most frustrating things as a teacher is when you show somebody how to do something and they're like, yep, I get it. And then they don't do it. Right.
Yeah.
So and the flip side of that is the greatest messages that I ever get are when people reach out to me after the fact and they're like, oh my God, I've been doing this for 30 days now. Like I've added this much more to my business. I've got 5 new listings. I have 3 listing appointments coming up this week. Like I've got a schedule. I'm taking days off. And I'm like, that's like the best thing in the world. There's no amount of pay as a teacher that would surpass that. I mean, you got to make enough to pay the bills and do the things you want to do, but
Right.
that is by far the most rewarding thing. And so what I never liked about the one-day workshop, and I would still do them because there are people that walked out of that one-day workshop and were like completely changed, right?
Yeah.
But I think for the majority of people, it is too much content to take in 8 hours and then wrap your head around what do I implement next. And even though the workshop is geared to help them break down, like what are the steps they're leaving with that they're going to do, because they can't do all of them when they leave, it still would fizzle out. People leave with that high of being at an event, and then they go back to their old ways unless they find somebody that's going to hold them accountable to it and whatever.
Right.
So I think the biggest thing that Zoom offers is the ability to break that content up.
Yep.
Right. Because what I couldn't do before is the companies, when they hired me to come out and run a training, they were putting 40, 50, 60 people in a room. Right. And to do that on 4 different weeks with everybody's calendar becomes very difficult to do.
Right.
And they would have had to pay for me to travel back and forth 4 different times. And I would have had to give up 12 days, because if you fly out the day before and fly home the next day or whatever, and you lose a couple of days of travel, now instead of 3 days to do a 1-day workshop, it's 12 days to do a 4-day workshop. It gets very expensive. It's not worth it time-wise.
Right.
But for the agents and salespeople going through the training, what a difference it's going to make when they only go through 2 hours of content that wraps up with okay, what are you going to do now between this week and next week when we meet again? And oh, by the way, I know we're not meeting again until next Tuesday. So this Friday, we're going to have a group coaching call where I'll be on the video Zoom piece here with you. And you can come with questions and struggles and things you're running into as you're trying to implement this. And so that's going to be the big shift. The content won't change. The delivery mechanism will change. And I think that people will be able to implement at a higher level because of it. So that's the big one. The other big one is that it used to be, how do I get one company to bring me out to do this training? And you got to get 40 or 50 people in a room from one company.
Yeah.
Which at an office with 200, 300, 400, 500 people, that's no big deal.
No problem.
But when you have a small brokerage that wants the same thing, but they've got 6 people to put in a room,
right,
it's not cost effective to fly me out to your brokerage to run the training for 6 people. Well, now you can sign your 6 people up and they're in the group with 6 people from another small brokerage, 5 people here, 3 people here, 20 from this one, and you put 100 people in the room. And just being able to run it so that you invite in other people that wouldn't have been able to add it to what they were doing for training, I think is a huge opportunity.
And what are you charging for this? Are you charging the same as you used to for the 1 day and just spreading that charge over the 4 days?
Good question. I don't know. So this is the part I haven't figured out yet. The good part about having it in one office is it's really easy to get people who would offset the cost of it because they would sponsor the event. Right. So I don't know what we'll have to charge at this point. I would imagine it will be similarly priced for the agents. Right. But I don't have a number yet, just because I have to figure out how do we offset getting it. Are people going to want to promote it if it's not local? Right. Right. Because you've got local people that are in like the law side of it, doing the closings, the title companies. You've got the mortgage people and things like that would sponsor on a local level because they're working with those agents. But now when you start opening it up nationally or even regionally, that becomes a little more difficult. Right. I'm sure we'll figure out some of those sponsors. There are people that provide tech tools and things like that to real estate agents that wouldn't care if it was regional or national or whatever. So we'll look at opportunities to pull some of those people in to sponsor them.
Large national mortgage companies like Quicken Loans, maybe they do something like that, or hard money guys for sure. The national hard money guys, they do stuff like that. Yeah, I like it. I like it, Brian. Like what you just said is exactly what we did, because we were doing the 1 day events, doing Alchemist 1 day events. And then we shifted and we actually pivoted to, now we do a mentorship program. It's 8 weeks, but it's 1 hour a week. It's really 1 hour of my effort a week. And it could be anybody across the country. Instead of just local people, it now is anybody across the country. And we're charging the same dollar amount, but they're getting way more value because now they have the whole week to implement and they get homework. So now between your 4 days, you're able to implement homework, and then they come back, and now you can get a whole lot more out of them. Activity allows them to take it in, right? Going out and practicing the things that they learned in 2 hours. Now that they go and do that, now they come back with, wow, Ryan, I got questions, right?
Right.
When you're sitting there for 8 hours, the questions stop. Now you're terrified. As a teacher, you're like, uh-oh, I overdid it, right?
Exactly. And so here's the other piece too. When you're talking about real estate agents, right? When you do an online thing like this and there's no cost to travel coming out,
yeah,
and they basically just need the cost of the workbook and then the time invested, and you can put 50, 60, 100 people in a room, in a Zoom room, and still have interaction because of breakout rooms and things like that, where they're able to interact with 3 or 4 people at a time. So because we can do all those things, I think we can keep the cost in like the $100, $200 range still, with the workbook and everything, which is insanely low. Yeah. And if you look at what people are getting, I mean, the people walking out, to get a phone call from somebody that says, hey, I started implementing the morning routine, and I built the schedule out. I figured out an exact plan for how I was targeting lead generation and customer acquisition. And then to go out and start like making those behavioral changes, to turn around and tell me they got 5 new listings because of it. I mean, in our area, that 5 new listings for commission.
Yeah.
If you're talking a $500,000 listing, you're $10,000, $15,000 in commission. So if I can turn people around to walk out the door, now, not everybody's doing this, right? But your top 10% people that are implementers are. Your next 30% are doing some of it. Some people are just going to leave and not put any of it into practice.
But they were going to do that anyway. So
right. And they might put it into practice 6 months from now or a year from now, but usually you don't hear back on those ones.
Right.
But to invest a couple $100 in your training, to walk out with something that might help you in the next like 30, 60, 90 days, put an extra 50, 60, 80, $100,000 into your business is insane return. So,
and this is for real estate agents, but my audience is primarily investors. It's the same strategy, right? You're talking to sellers.
Same strategy.
You're talking to sellers. You're trying to get that seller to sell to you, and the agent's just trying to get that seller to list to them. It's the same exact work to that point. It's just a different conversation once you get there. So Ryan, what is the easiest way for somebody to get in touch with you and find out when your next event is, or how they can sign up for your next event? Or if you haven't scheduled them yet, what's just the easiest way to get in touch with you to get added to a list for you to set something like this up?
Yeah, so the easiest place is my website, which is explosivesalesgrowth.com. And so they'll see the new list of the calendar. We haven't posted the first virtual online one. I'm still building out the process of what that's going to look like exactly. I want to have it right. I don't want to guinea pig it. So we'll have that on the Explosive Sales Growth. There's a speaking page on there, and that's where the workshops are typically listed. So they'll find them on there. The other place to find me would be on Facebook. So I've got an author page on Facebook. That's just Ryan Snow. If they search and pull up that author page, I post anything that we're doing there. And they can watch right now. They get a bunch of free content because I've got this Elevate Live series going on, and I am interviewing some rock star people. A lot of talk about the real estate investment world. And I've had some really great guests so far. We're about 8 episodes in. I think we just finished the 8th episode today. And I've got another one tomorrow, a couple more next week, and we'll probably go. It's a short-term thing. I'm just doing it for a few months to help people elevate their life and business right now with everything going on. And then we'll see what happens if that becomes like a permanent podcast scenario.
I've been seeing it. It's the reason I reached out to you. I've been seeing what you're doing. I said, you know what? I got to grab Ryan. He's doing some really great stuff for the community. I love the idea of elevating people, especially right now. I love that you're doing it for right now. You're working harder now than you've worked in the past because you're grabbing market share. You're helping more people. You're just saying, hey, you know what? This is a tough time. This is the time for you to wake up and let's go make some money. Let's go improve your life for your family. Yeah, Ryan, you've always been a giver. You've always, anytime I've asked a question, you've been there to help. When you do your first ones, I want to be a part of it. Explosivegrowth.com. I want
Explosivesalesgrowth.com.
Explosivesalesgrowth.com. So let me know when you're doing your first ones. I want to jump in there. I want to help fill the room. What you do, what you've created for yourself, and what you do for Cameron, I absolutely support, and I appreciate like everything you're putting out there. So, Ryan Snell. Phenomenal friend, phenomenal author, phenomenal salesperson, father. Follow him on Facebook, follow him on Instagram. When you have a choice, I always work with the best. Later, brother. Thank you so much for your time today.
I appreciate you, brother. Thanks for asking me to come on.
Definitely, man. Keep the good work.
All right. Take it easy.
Later.